Hello everyone, welcome back to Reflections. Today I just want to reflect on actually a Bible study that we had last night. Yes, we are back to Bible study. I'm super excited. And it's funny because we were actually talking about the same thing we were when we ended Bible study back in March. We stepped backwards a little bit, and that's fine because it's good stuff. It's all in the Bible, so it's good. We need to talk about it over and over. But we were reading through a little bit of Romans 12 again. So I just want to read just the first two verses real quick, and then I want to talk about what I was reflecting on myself because of what I'm studying in a totally different area of the Bible. So in Romans 12, it says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. So the part that I was thinking about, based on what I've been studying, is the being conformed to the world part, right? Because we hear that a lot. We're like, God says, you can't worship the world and worship me. It's one or the other. You can't have one foot in, one foot out. Like, you love me or you love the world, right? We hear that all the time. Like, but we're in the world, right? So it's a little hard for people and it's confusing. And you're like, well, the world's 24/7 all around me and in me. And here it's in my face. And I live in the world and I have to function in the world. So that's tough. And we just read it and we're like, yeah, don't conform to the world. But do we think about it? And do we really get down to the nitty-gritty, I guess, right? So last week I was talking about self-awareness and those unintentional sins and how we're not really self-aware of the personal worldly acceptable sins. I was talking about overeating and drinking and things like that, because they're worldly acceptable, right? So we kind of even forget that they're wrong. So I was kind of thinking about that a little bit too. And I'm currently studying Genesis, really deep. And I want to go to Genesis 4. So God's going through the genealogy, right, from Adam, right? And he's talking about Cain and Abel. And we know Cain was bad, right? Abel was good. Cain killed Abel. Bad, right? And he wasn't really repentant. God talked to him and he was told him he was going to be punished. And he was like, that's not a fair punishment. It was kind of ridiculous because he killed his brother. But he's talking to him. And then it goes on and it continues with the bloodline. And then Adam and Eve do have another son, right, that they talk about and they go through his bloodline. But an interesting thing that I found as they're talking in chapter 4 about Cain's bloodline starts in verse 19, is the detail about the specific people through his bloodline. So I'll just start reading to you in verse 20. It says, and Ada bare Jabal. He was the father of such as dwell in tents and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Then it says in verse 23, and Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech, hearken unto my speech. He was very modest. For I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? Okay, so as I'm studying it, you look at these things, and verse 20, he's talking about the cattle and the dwelling in tents, and I found that is kind of like a start of commerce. 22, he's talking about... 21, he's talking about the harp and the organ. They were the first instruments, really. They started music and entertainment. And then in 22, we're talking about the artificer is a cutting instrument and brass and iron, right? And having ironwork. Then after that, we've got 23, which is said to be the first example of poetry. that existed. So here you've got commerce, instruments, music, poetry, culture, right? Like culture was born. And you're like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, it's interesting because these are the wicked people. This is the wicked line, the wicked bloodline. These were not good. And you could say, well, what's wrong with culture? Culture is the world. Maybe a musical instrument is not bad. Maybe playing music is not bad. Maybe writing a poem is not bad. Those things are not bad. What Satan does is he uses these things, right? Like these things became the focus for these people. The culture became the focus. The industry became the focus. That work, that distraction became the worship, right? It talks later about the idols that people made. Like God started talking about idols for a reason because people were making idols, right? So the thing I was reflecting on in Romans 12 about conforming to the world, it's like, along with self-awareness of those little acceptable sin, like, do we understand culture? Like, and how it doesn't have to be bad for it to be wrong in God's eyes. I say all the time, what you spend your effort, your time, your money, and your focus on, what you spend that on, guys, what you think about all day, what you talk about all day, what you do all day, what you spend your money on, that is what you worship. If it's your poetry, if it's your music, then that's an idol, and then that is a sin, right? So he's saying, don't conform to the world. Don't be part of culture. I think a lot of religions turned into just culture, personally. It's a bunch of acts, right? And like tradition and things. You ask people why they even do them, they don't know because we've just always done it. That's culture, you know? So I guess my reflection would be just, think about that. Like, just think it through and think about, like, what are you doing? Beyond self-awareness of, like, personal sin, even if it's your kids you're obsessing about or whatever, like, whatever it is, you can live in this world and not be part of this world, right? Like, we don't have to worship the world. We don't have to do what everybody else says. We don't have to vote the way people say. We don't have to have Facebook because everyone has it. Like, you don't have to do everything because culture says that's what we do. Think about the reason that you do everything, and think about how much time and energy and effort you put into all of those things, and then pray about it and decide if it's something you should do or not. So I hope this is like another thing that you guys can reflect on and think about, because I never really, I know some cultural things could be like that, but this was just like gave me like a little new outlook to it. And I encourage you to study Genesis yourself. There's a lot of really cool things in here. Genesis and Revelation are some pretty cool books in the Bible. So check it out yourself. And if you need a Bible, let me know. I'll give you one. But just think about that, guys, and pray about it. And thanks for watching. Please share this video because I think it'd be cool if everybody could at least reflect on, how culture affects them in their life. So I love you guys, and God loves you guys. Have a great week.